Hey, Fort Smith, welcome to Give Me 5 minutes with Fort Smith City Director Neil Martin, where we talk about the events that happened last week and we look ahead to what's going on this week. Let's go ahead and jump in and talk about our meeting last week. It was scheduled on Monday. It was moved to Wednesday due to weather, and a lot of interesting things I wanted to share with you. I always encourage you to go to fortsmithar.gov/watch. There you can see the full agenda. You can see how all your directors voted, or you can watch the meeting to see the discussion around everything. I'm just going to cover a few of those items, and you can go to the website to get the rest of the information. So we disagreed on a couple things. One was related to a rezoning at 5800 Cliff Drive. That was a rezoning, 6 in favor, 1 against. Director George Katsavas voted against it. And we also disagreed on a item for the consent decree. This was really, really interesting. The winning bid for this project was like $3 million lower, like 40% lower than every other bid. And that caused a lot of concern for the board of directors. We had a lot of discussions about it, and we had tabled it from our last meeting. What it came down to is the entity that won the bid, that had the lowest bid, was unable to obtain surety. And that, helps to cover them in case there's a problem. They weren't able to get that. They were asking to get out of it. We ended up defeating that. The motion did not pass, so it's going to go for someone else to bid on. That was defeated, 2 in favor, 5 against, and Director Settle and Director Good voted in favor of it. I think we made the right decision on this one, and so we were not moving forward on that contract with that particular entity. The other thing that I think was pretty interesting that we did, and I think is impactful to the city and impactful for us for budgeting. We had on our agenda capital improvement plans for streets, sidewalks, parks, solid waste, water, wastewater, police, fire, a bunch of capital improvement plans. And this is planning for how they're going to spend dollars, not only this year, but over the next few years. And it can change over the next few years, but it's allocating dollars for next year. After some discussion and some concerns that I raised and maybe Director Settle raised, is the fact that we felt like it's better to table these until we actually have our budget hearing on November 22nd. So we deal with the budget first and we determine how much money is available for these CIPs in 2025. So we voted 7-0 to table. I think that was the smart move. I think that was the right move, especially in light of water rate increases and some other things that are going on around the city. So we did that. But again, I encourage you to go watch that meeting and see all that discussion that happened around that. Very interesting things. This Tuesday, back to Tuesday meetings, we have a study session. And again, we'll be at the Blue Lion, 101 North 2nd Street in downtown Fort Smith. This study session has some pretty important items that you want to be aware of. First off, we'll be talking about the scheduled meetings, the regularly scheduled meetings of the board of directors for 2025. So we'll be looking ahead and see when we'll be having those meetings, see if there's any day that we need to remove or do some different things with. So we'll be doing that. We'll be looking at citywide water meter replacement and upgrade. So we'll be talking about some of that stuff and getting more information. We will also be discussing water rates, irrigation rates, all these kinds of things. If you go and look at the board packet, you can see water rates, you can see proposals, you can see water rates from communities surrounding us. And I think that's going to really help us because we've had a lot of feedback around water rates and irrigation rates and those kinds of things. So we'll be talking about that. We will also be reviewing the impact of a couple court cases by the Supreme Court. One was a decision, Grants Pass, Oregon versus Johnson, and Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. In the Grants Pass decision, that is a decision that the Supreme Court made that ruled that cities can penalize folks that are camping on public property. And it basically says that these ordinance that cities make for not camping out on public property do not violate the Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment. I think this is really going to change how we deal with homelessness in our area, especially around our homeless shelters and those types of things. So very interesting discussions. We've seen an influx of homelessness around. It's been a challenge for cities to be able to address homelessness. I think this is going to give us a better handle. I think some of the things I've heard from the board, me included, have grown very frustrated in our inability to handle homelessness around the city, especially around downtown. So we're going to be talking about that. The other item has really significant impact is the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Chevron deferences in the Loper-Bright case. Now, what Chevron deference did, it allowed federal agencies like the EPA to interpret ambiguous laws, including the Clean Water Act, which is part of the reason that we're in the consent decree today. So with that now overturned, courts now have the authority to independently interpret the Clean Water Act. So we are going to see how this overturning of Chevron deference impacts the consent decree we have today. We've talked to our lawyers. The lawyers haven't really been all that high on this, but I think it's going to have broad impact across the United States, and hopefully it'll have broad impact here related to our consent decree. Finally, we'll be having a presentation by the Main Street Fort Smith group. They are impactful in growing and developing our downtown, so we're going to hear a presentation from them. But there's a lot of things. This is going to be a long meeting, I believe. I think it's going to be pretty impactful for us as well. So I encourage you to pay attention to what's going on there. That's it for this week's Give Me Five. I hope the information was informative and made you better aware of the items that are in front of your board of directors. Everybody have a great, great week. We'll see you on Tuesday, and we'll do this again next Sunday on Give Me Five.